Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're talking about how to completely rewire your life. And the best part is, we're going to do it without relying on sheer, exhausting motivation. If you really want to get things on track, you actually have to start with the small, kind of boring habits. Why? Because these tiny little adjustments actually fix the fundamental loops causing like 95% of our problems. You literally don't need sweeping, massive life overhauls to succeed. What you need is to bypass motivation entirely and just lock in on micro habits. Okay, let's dive into this by looking at the totally extraordinary background of our source materials author, Sandeep Swadia. Just look at this progression. We're talking about a guy who went from being a homeless teenager, trained as a monk, somehow made his way to MIT, and eventually became a CEO. I mean, wow, right? It instantly shatters this whole illusion we have that massive success requires making massive, sweeping changes all at once. He didn't pull this off by simply dreaming harder. He did it by obsessively focusing on microscopic actions that compounded over time. Swadia actually had a friend who climbed Mount Everest multiple times. And when he asked him what he remembered most about the actual climb, his advice was just brutally simple. He said, "When you're climbing Mount Everest, don't look up. If you look up, the mountain can break you." You see, above 8,000 meters, climbers enter what's known as the dead zone. Up there, the oxygen is so thin that every single step is just incredibly expensive on your body. If you stare at the peak, it's just totally overwhelming. Instead, you have to break that daunting, massive goal into a simple rhythm. Take a step, pause, take the next step. And you know what? Our own big, ambitious goals are exactly like this. We really have to stop our brains from pretending we can sprint up the whole mountain all at once. Let's move to and see how this builds our metaphorical journey up the mountain using the three core pillars of your human operating system. 1. Attention. 2. Energy. And 3. Happiness. All right, pillar number 1. Attention, defending your focus. Our very first attention habit is something called correct after the click. So think about an airplane on autopilot for a second. The plane almost never flies in a perfectly straight line, right? Wind pushes it around, the earth is curving, and so the autopilot is constantly making this continuous series of tiny little recoveries just to reach the destination. Well, as humans, we usually try to stop our bad habits before they even happen. We tell ourselves, okay, I'm absolutely not going to check my phone during deep work today. But when you inevitably slip and click a distracting app, because let's be real, you will, that right there is your actual window of opportunity. The exact second you notice that reflex has fired, attach a good habit immediately. So you click the app, fine, but immediately put the phone down, go grab a glass of water, or maybe just take one deep breath. You're basically interrupting the interruption, making that micro correction, and putting your plane right back on course. Our second attention habit is all about controlling your inputs, and it's driven by this fascinating psychological quirk called the Zeigarnik effect. So back in the day, a psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik noticed this amazing micro-narrative playing out in a local cafe. She saw that waiters perfectly remembered these incredibly complex unpaid orders, but the absolute second the bill was settled, poof, the order completely vanished from their memory. Here's the thing, if a task is unfinished, like a random unread email or maybe a meeting that ended without clear next steps, your brain literally keeps reaching back for it. It constantly drains your brain's resources, exactly like having 20 different apps silently running in the background of your smartphone. So the crucial point is we absolutely have to close those background apps. And you do this by processing your inputs in batches, so maybe checking emails only 2 or 3 times a day, and by using what we call the 4D framework. It's super simple. When you open a new input, you touch it only once. You either do it, delegate it, date it, which just means schedule it for later, or delete it. Giving yourself this rigid little structure gives your brain the permission it craves to officially finish the task, put it down, and finally get some rest. The third attention habit here is writing to think. You know, Jeff Bezos famously built this culture at Amazon where senior meetings would start in total silence. Everyone just sits there reading a written memo for 15 minutes. Why do that? Because simply typing something out or throwing together a flashy PowerPoint can actually hide really sloppy thinking. But writing out a full paragraph by hand, that forces you to actually connect one thought logically to the next. Plus, a joint study from Princeton and UCLA showed that students who hand-wrote their notes completely outperformed those who typed them when it came to conceptual questions. Actually writing things down by hand literally empties out the mind and lifts that mental fog before you have to make hard decisions. Moving right along to pillar number 2, energy, fueling the ascent. Our first energy habit here is definitely the smallest, yet arguably the most powerful. Way back in 1900, the physicist Max Planck discovered that energy doesn't just flow smoothly, it actually moves in these tiny, discrete little packets that he called a quantum. And we need to apply this exact same physics principle to our daily actions by quantizing our habits. Look, the absolute hardest part of literally any habit is just starting it, right? The friction is huge. So you've got to break it down to the smallest possible physical entity. Don't commit to a full, exhausting workout. Commit to doing half a push-up. Don't promise yourself you're going to scrub the whole kitchen tonight. Commit to picking up exactly one dish. Just completely obliterate that starting friction. And this brilliantly illustrates the immense, literally world-altering power of that concept. Back in 1945, the Manhattan Project took the absolute smallest thing in nature, a single atom, and split it. When J. Robert Oppenheimer saw the result, he famously quoted the Bhagavad Gita, saying, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Splitting the tiniest unit in nature released enough energy to permanently alter the entire course of human history. And honestly, that is exactly why your microscopic habits carry such explosive, life-changing potential for your own daily routine. Let's look at our second energy habit, and this one is absolutely vital. A fascinating 2013 sleep study revealed that caffeine has a half-life of about 5 or 6 hours. So what does that actually mean for you? Well, it means if you grab a cup of coffee at 4 p.m. just to survive that afternoon slump, half of that caffeine is still actively buzzing around in your system at 9 p.m. A quarter of it might still be there well after midnight, completely sabotaging your ability to get genuine, deep rest. Which leads me to ask you directly, why are you waking up groggy? You might feel like you technically slept through the whole night, but that lingering caffeine secretly prevented any genuine recovery from happening. So you wake up super tired, you immediately reach for another coffee just to compensate, and boom, you are feeding this destructive, endless loop. The micro habit here is incredibly simple, but admittedly really tough for some of us. You have to establish a clear, non-negotiable cutoff time for your caffeine at least 6 hours before your bedtime. No exceptions. Our third energy habit is recognizing a fundamental truth. Your afternoon crash is absolutely not a failure of your discipline. A scientist named Nathaniel Kleitman discovered what he called ultradian cycles. Basically, our brains operate in these predictable, natural waves of about 80 to 120 minutes of peak focus, which are then naturally followed by deep dips. Our modern workdays are structured to treat us like we're these endless factory workers. But guys, we aren't machines. You actually have to ride the waves. When you hit a dip, you need a genuine, input-free recovery break. Don't try to fill your break with more stimulation like scrolling social media. Stand up, walk around, breathe. Take 10 real minutes to just reset the wave. And finally, we arrive at pillar number 3, happiness, protecting your perspective. You know, when life gets unbearably heavy, one of the absolute best micro-habits you can practice is simply to step outside at night and just look up. Our universe is a story 13.8 billion years in the making. The starlight you see hitting your eyes right now, it's essentially a delayed ghost from the distant past. Some of that light literally took thousands of years just to reach you. Some of those stars you're looking at might already be dead. Looking up at this incomprehensible scale naturally shrinks down our daily anxieties, and it instills this profound, almost overwhelming sense of awe. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when you look back down at yourself. The exact same ancient atoms that made those stars, they made you. And you are constantly, quietly renewing. Seriously, in the roughly 8 seconds it took me to say that last sentence, 30 million cells in your body were completely replaced. You are literally ever-changing stardust. You are fundamentally worthy of profound gratitude simply for existing. These two little micro-habits, looking up to find awe and looking at yourself to find gratitude, they are powerful reminders that your life is incredibly large. And this brings us to the 9th and absolutely most crucial habit of the entire explainer, self-forgiveness. Listen to me on this one. On your worst days, when everything goes wrong and every single hour feels like a firefight, every habit and system we just talked about is going to inevitably shatter. You're going to slip. It happens. But the real habit here is flat out refusing to exhaust yourself further in a downward spiral of shame. You simply do not have to be your best self on your absolute worst day. Constant self-prosecution is honestly far more exhausting than simply missing a habit. And I want to leave you with this final quiet thought. The best habits don't keep you from getting lost. They help you find your way home. So tomorrow, when your systems break down, forgive yourself. Take a step back and simply take the next smallest step. So, what I want to know is,
Which of these unsexy micro habits are you going to use to find your way home today?